Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I am so excited for you to see this episode because we're going to talk about all things vision with Claudia Muehlenweg. Claudia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Freddie.
So 0 to 10, how did I do for the pronunciation of your last name?
When you practiced, you did a little bit better, but you did pretty good.
Okay, will you do it? Will you say it for the audience?
Claudia Mühlenweg.
Muehlenweg. Yeah, it's subtle. It's so unique. I am totally German. I'm like 125% German when I run my genetics. I'm so excited to have you on the show, selfishly, Claudia, because in the last 8 months, my vision has started to not be perfect, and it was always perfect. Now, if I look across the room, I can read the clock on the wall, farsightedness, but when I'm looking at my phone in the morning lately, and I'm looking at little labels like this, I'm like, if I hold it close, it gets blurry. I was like, what happened? I turned 47 last weekend. So this is topical for me.
That's a perfect topic to talk about. So-called presbyopia, old age sight.
Oh man, old age sight sounds terrible.
I know.
Can we go into your background a little bit? What would you if we were walking down the street, we bumped into each other because of my bad vision. What would you tell me you do for a living?
That's a good question. I would say I help you improve your eyesight naturally.
Beautiful. And people might hear that at home and they may say to themselves, well, that's impossible. I'm getting older. My eyesight is degenerating. How is that possible? Maybe we can go in. Let's talk about the eye a little bit and why vision degrades over time.
So like the rest of our body, right? We get more wrinkles, we lose some muscle power, like things are changing, right? Some of our joints are changing, the whole biology changes as we get older. Okay, that's normal. That's part of aging. But you know better than anybody, what we do has a big impact on how we age. Do we age well? Do we age optimally? Do we age powerfully? Or do we just let things decline and get worse and worse? So I think that's the big thing to differentiate is, yes, I would never say we're not aging. We have the same eyes as a newborn. That's absolutely not true.
Yeah. Well, we'll go deeper in that. So with that, with the we'll say we're moving towards, right? I'm a little baby. I'm moving towards hopefully a 90 or 100-year-old. What happens to the eyes that change our quality of vision?
So, I mean, there's so many categories, but to oversimplify, the the muscles of the eyes can get weaker. The vitreous humor, which is, I have a model of the eyeball. Let me grab this. So, for those of you watching, if you're just listening, I have a model of the eyeball, and inside is this big jello. Think of this clear gel called the vitreous humor. And as we get older, that can liquefy a little bit. Pieces can break off, known as floaters. Those are little specks flying around. Some people might experience so-called vitreous detachment, where it kind of moves away from the retina a little bit. You might see some flashes of light on the side. Another thing that can happen is that the lens just gets more cloudy. That's known as a cataract. So, which is linked to diabetes, and we can talk about all the root causes like heavy metal exposure, steroid drugs. But cataracts are, eye doctors might say everybody gets a cataract eventually. And so that is a common thing that can happen. And I would say those are the main things. And also um, so-called macular degeneration. So the macula, sorry, taking my model here. For those of you that see it, it's the sharpest spot in the back of our retina is the macula, where we have the sharpest vision. That's basically where you see the best and sharpest, most color vision. It's the fovea lutea, the yellow spot. And if we eat a poor diet, for instance, right? We need to get those nutrients to the diet. And if you eat a poor diet, that can kind of degenerate, and that's known as macular degeneration.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are all the eye diseases. And then the other problem that can happen is what you are talking about. We call that refractive errors, which is basically related to how the light gets refracted through the cornea and the lens and the vitreous humor. That is nearsightedness, farsightedness, and astigmatism. So those are the three refractive errors. Does that all make
Yes.
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And this will be a good one, guys. Well, we'll put clips up on this definitely on social media and we'll put the whole thing on YouTube on video. But if I've got a label here. If I'm moving this in and out, and I'm like, now I'm like, okay, here's the distance, right? I need 12 to 13 inches away, and everything looks good. Everything looks great. It's when I bring it close. What is that malady in my eyesight that's happening?
So the lens, and again, I'm holding up a plastic lens for my model. So the inner lens, or the crystalline lens, it's known, it's very clear. That lens, when you look in the distance, the ciliary muscle around it, which kind of controls how the lens, think of a biceps muscle, right? If you flex your biceps, so the lens gets more bulgy when you look up close. So when you look up
Mm-hmm.
close, focusing up on your small print, the lens is getting more bulgy and the ciliary muscle has to work. So there's an active engagement of the muscles. When we look in the distance, the ciliary muscle is relaxed, the lens is flat. So the distant state is the relaxed state of the eyes. And one more thing, I have two little rubber eyeballs here. When we look up close, we have to do something called converging. So think of extreme case crossing your eyes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the eyeballs have to kind of come together. Versus if you look in the distance, they're parallel to each other, like train tracks, right? They're parallel. So that is also a muscular effort on the outer. Each eye has 6 muscles around the eyeball. So those muscles have to be more engaged when we look up close because we have to converge, we have to cross our eyes. The eyeballs have to come toward each other. So there is more muscular effort in the fact of looking up close than it is when you look in the distance.
Claudia, when I dive into a new subject like lymphatics or pulse electromagnetic field or red light therapy, I usually find some fun facts that are just incredible about that system. The idea that the lymphatic system has no pump to drive it, or there's 3 times as much lymphatic fluid as there is blood. What are some amazing facts about the eye that you give to people to get them excited about the power of their vision or what's going on there?
So the first number one thing is that I always say, you don't see with your eyes. I always say we see in the brain, right? I mean, we all know that. It's like the eyes are the light receivers, and then the retina is actually the retina is part of the brain, but we actually see in the brain, mostly in the visual cortex. So, and that's why we have visual illusions and things where people can argue for days about how, remember that dress? Like there was this blue black dress, and some people said it was like white and yellow. Do you remember that? It was a meme like around 2015, but endless
I do.
discussions and like almost like politics. People were arguing with each other, and it's basically the brain thinks of like, is this in the shadow? Is this outside? Is this? So you kind of take information to create a picture in your mind what this thing should look like. Or like when you see drawings of these on sidewalks, right? And they look like a 3D canyon that you can fall in from a
Yes.
specific angle. So we can actually pretty easily trick the brain. And so that's one thing that I always find fascinating. We talked about the eyeball health, right? Yes, the eyeball has to be healthy, right? If you don't have an eyeball or your retina is detached or whatever happens, right? You don't have a lens in your eye, the mechanical system of how you interpret the information is beautifully broken. But in the end of the day, we don't see in the eyes, we see in the brain.
Yeah, fascinating. Fascinating. And remind me, when we're developing as a fetus, like where did the eyes come from? I remember there was something really cool about this too.
Oh gosh, I think they grow out of the brain, but I don't actually 100% know. I just know that I hear different things between age 10 to age 15 for the visual system to really develop. And especially babies need to learn how to do this convergence, right? They need to like hand-eye coordination and how the eyes work together. And I actually had so-called strabismus as a kid, and you can still see it in some photos, meaning my right eye would always turn toward the nose. And if your eyes, that's another factor we haven't talked about. How do the two eyes work together? Because only when we focus on one thing with both eyes pointing at that thing, we have so-called 3D vision or depth perception. Otherwise, we see a flat picture. And those are
Mm,
the so-called binocular vision problems like double vision, lazy eye, a squint, where the eye goes in or out, or both eyes go in or out. So there's all kinds of different correlations too, where the brain, like if you see things double, right, the brain will say, well, this is confusing, and then usually one eye gets kind of quote unquote turned off, and that's when
mm-hmm.
people get lazy eye. And a lot of these things are things that happen in childhood or even as a baby.
Yeah. So I have a really good spot to pick up, but before we go forward, why vision? Why are you a vision expert? Why do you teach people how to see? Like, where did this passion begin in your life?
Great question. So I had, I was farsighted. So there's a difference between presbyopia, what you have, and true farsightedness. A true farsight, I'm just working with somebody in my program actually, and they might have a +5 or 6 for distance and a +8 or 9. Like really, like think of really strong reading glasses, like super big magnifying glass. So I was farsighted, and I had this right eye would always go in. In other words, I would bump into things. I would the clumsy kid. And so I got glasses when I was 3 years old, and I'm way older than you. I'm born in the 60s. And I have a picture of me on the first day of school. I was literally the only kid with glasses in my whole classroom of 30 kids. And of course, we were bullied, you were teased. There was no Harry Potter, there was no geeks. Like glasses were simply not cool at all. You were like a loser. And I remember getting a little older, and I was so shy. I had no friends. I was always miserable. And so I really I never wore the glasses when I didn't have to. I tried to just not wear them. And then I remember I was recruited to the handball team. And you know why? Because in my little town, there was not enough girls. So they asked everybody because I was the worst. I couldn't throw a catch for the life of it, but I was a good defender. So I could run around, and I couldn't wear my glasses. And because they were glass, they were actually too dangerous with a leather handball. If I got hit in the head all the time because I was, again, bad at catching and throwing. But 3 years after doing that, playing, peripheral vision, moving, like doing all the things outside in the sunshine, my eye doctor said that my eyes have gotten better. And that got me, like, I was like 14, 15. And I was like, wait, what? Like, and at some point I didn't need to wear glasses. And then a couple years into that, I was studying for high school. I was not a good student. I was like doing all the learning, freaking out about exams. And my vision got blurry again. And at that point, I had tasted like 2 years of freedom. And I was like, wait, I do not ever want to get back to glasses. And that's when I really discovered natural vision improvement. And I did all the things. And I was glasses free till my mid 30s. And then, long story short, horrible marriage, divorce, single mom, back in glasses. And then I did it again in my 40s. So, yeah. But that got me really interested because nobody had told me your vision can get better. And when the doctor said, oh, you don't need your eyes are normal. I think he said your eyes are normal. I was like, wait, what? Like that was like the biggest, and then boys would be, "You have beautiful eyes." And before I would just be called, whatever the German version is of what do you call people here that, what is the tease word for eyed or something? What is
Four
the,
eyes. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. They would have different words in German, but it was mean. It was really mean.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I'm sending love back to that little girl who felt shy and embarrassed about who she was right now. I just want to
thank you,
pause and
thank
say
you.
that.
That always brings tears back up because I had such a miserable. I was at home. I would always have like be extrovert, and my mom's like, "Why do you never say anything at school? Your teacher says you don't say anything," because I was so scared. I was really in this fear mode the whole time. And when the glasses broke, you were on the playground. They would have to be taped together. My parents didn't have money, and so it was like they became this kind of thing that was, I had to be really careful about. But also, you're on the playground, you're swinging around, like the glasses were just a pain in the, what.
Yeah. You're a kid. You're supposed to
Yeah,
be in the state
yeah,
of play.
yeah.
Um, when we look at today, modern day society, I have all these stats floating around in my head, which I'll quote all the time. I'm looking at the rate of autism, chronic illness, MS, Parkinson's, just skyrocket across the board. How is vision, the health of, if you know this or you're aware, how is vision in the world impacted by some of these environmental factors like metals or the digital age? I've got a supercomputer in my pocket that I'm looking at all the time.
I'm really, really, really concerned about children. I actually have some statistics. So in the 70s, the rates of nearsightedness is not what you have, but nearsightedness means you can look up close really well, but then things in the distance get really blurry. The rates of nearsightedness were about 25% in the 70s. And in the US, it's about 42% now. And in China and other Southeast Asian countries, Singapore has like 93% of youth, children and young adults are nearsighted now. And
Mm,
so there is an epidemic. And then, and we saw from Zoom School, I think there was 6% increase just in those few years that China reported. And we now know, and you didn't ask me this, but we now know from so many, and I can give you lots of different, from animal studies to looking at kids' behaviors, but kids that play outside, that get the natural light into their eyes, lower rates of nearsightedness. So it's, and then they thought, well, maybe it's because they look in the distance, which is a factor, but the bigger differentiator was the sunlight. And now we spend all day inside, we spend all day looking at artificial screens. Now the schools are all upgrading, quote unquote, to like have the kids work on iPads and, instead of books, which is for the eye, a digital, like a backlit screen is harder to focus on than a physical object where the light actually, so the eyes have an easier focal point. So, and then, all the 3D games now too, which I don't know much about, but the virtual reality and those kind of games where you put where there's a fake 3D world, but it's not the actual real 3D. I don't know about anything like data on that, but I really think the brain will not develop the same way. There will be problems.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely changing. I think, I will say we are out of alignment with the governing laws of nature,
Mm.
or some phrase that makes that people are like, oh, that makes a lot of sense to me. A lot has changed as far as behavior. When we say natural vision therapies, and you say this is a technique you use, natural vision. You said you've used it when you were younger and you had that experience with playing outside, more sunlight exposure, changing your visual field, play, and then you redid it in your 40s. What are you referring to when you talk about that natural vision therapies?
So the basis of all vision improvement is really the Bates method. And if you look online, it's getting bashed and all these things. But Dr. Bates was an ophthalmologist in New York. He, was mostly active from like 1890 to like 1920. He wrote this book, The Perfect Sight Without Glasses, 1920. He was a Columbia
Mm.
professor. He actually discovered adrenaline and he created an ear surgery that is still used today. But then and he was the person who was curious, just like you and I are. He had patients and their vision improved. And he was like, wait, that doesn't fit into the model I learned in ophthalmology school. And then he started doing animal experiments. He worked with hundreds and thousands of clients with kids. And he developed this method. And it's really based on, we would nowadays say it's based on uh, neuroscience, on nervous system regulation, on being relaxed, having a positive mindset, like all the words that we use now. But that's really the gist of the foundation. And, Andrew Huberman did a podcast, an episode called Vision, Improve Your Vision. And the things that he was talking about, Bates talked about sunlight. Because just then, when he was writing that book, the sunglasses started to, like in the 1920s, 1930s, the first sunglasses, which were actually just celluloid film. They weren't even blocking UV light, but and then Hollywood stars. So, and Huberman talks about the same thing, how important sunlight is and shifting your focus. But Bates was really more using the mind and what he called memory and imagination, because if you have an easy memory or imagination of something, then you can actually see it easier. So it's working really with the brain, and it's not eye exercises. People always think it's eye exercises. That's not what it is. So that's really the foundation of all, natural vision improvement is the discoveries. And now with neuroscience and MRI scans and all the things that we have, we can track a lot of these things way better.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Why, if we look up the Bates method, why does he take heat online now?
Wikipedia, I mean, I think I'm not a conspiracy theorist, to be honest, but I think there is also
Sure.
$1 billion industry related to glasses, contacts, sunglasses, all these things. So, here's the thing, what you do, I don't like the word biohacking, but what you do
Hmm.
is, like what we both do is like, we are teaching people different lifestyle habits. What can you do? And most people don't want to do that. Most people are just like, I want to take the pill or whatever. I want to do the quick fix. And that's why, so I heard an eye doctor say once, well, if it would work, everybody would do it. I'm like, first of all, you guys, and not that, but you guys are actually people that always say it doesn't work to all your patients. And when they come back to you and have improved vision and they said they did this, oh, I must have measured wrong the first time. Literally all the things that my clients tell me. Then also not everybody will do it because it's work. You have to be willing to look at yourself. You have to, eat a better diet. You have to just create better habits. You have to look at your beliefs. about yourself, like all these emotions are a big factor in vision problems. Because I'm curious what happened 8 months ago when you told me like things got worse. And I know a little bit that
Mm.
changed for you around 8 months ago. But I'm like, like we're looking at all these things, really. Does that make sense? So,
Of course it does. Of course. I mean, and I would join with you in that. Yeah, it's just such a triggering term. Is there a group of people conspiring top down? I would generally tell you that it's more or less unconscious capitalism and gross negligence. That
yes.
people are sort of a company is a machine. It feeds. It needs the almighty dollar, and it can't. It can't flatline. Companies know growth or they know dying. So we take shortcuts. We all do it in different ways. So I join with you in that. I understand it's a tough topic for people to swallow, and I think whatever bias you want, you could probably go find it. Given the Google algorithm is basically going to reconfirm whatever you're looking for.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
But I do want to say one thing. There was then actually several articles in the LA Times also about the glasses mafia, because it's now just, I forgot the names, but 2 or 3 companies in the world, and the pricing is literally over 1,000% marked up to what it actually costs to make these glasses. And
Yeah.
when I work with my clients, I always, we always determine together. They measure their vision. They kind of work with the eye doctor if needed. But you can now order glasses online for like, depending on the strength of, even if you're nearsighted, but you can get glasses online for like 10, $20. No need
Mm,
to pay like 400, 500, 6. I mean, I had a
mm,
client, she told me $1,500 for a
mm.
pair of glasses, and there was a great book, by the way, written by so-called, and we can talk about this, behavioral optometrists who are, that's what they do, vision therapy. That's not something I do. Therapy is something that these behavioral optometrists do. And they've written a book talking about how glasses are not, no, that we basically, they are not safe, because it's like people's vision usually gets worse once they start wearing glasses. And they're like, how have we become, how have we accepted this as a form of treatment, and then people pay happily every year to make their condition worse. How have we accepted this? So glasses are necessary for many people. I'm not saying that all glasses are bad, but that
Mm-hmm.
idea that that's the only approach, and that we are like, okay, making it worse and paying all this money, that to me is just insanity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's finding a belief system where you either have an experience or you have a story in your immediate community where you've witnessed the natural intelligence of the body take over and start to correct some of these things, be it severe autoimmunity or weight loss. We could say the same thing for weight loss, right? It's like, well, if everybody knew how to lose weight, they would all do it. They would just stop eating crap. But that appears to be not working for us. Wild. That's like the big elephant in the room right now. Did you watch the Super Bowl last night?
I do not care. Sorry, it's
Okay,
not.
great. All good. There
No,
was a
it's what
commercial.
happened. I don't know the teams or who won or who. I actually used to work in advertising, Freddie. You don't know that about me, but I used to work for many years as an art director in advertising. I was always a very visual person, and so I would watch it for the ads because I think creative advertising is really cool. But I did not. So tell me.
Yeah. Well, the process. So I'm really fascinated with this because I do, I work in the world of consulting as well. I work with companies in tech, and it is fascinating at what pushes people to pick up a phone or make a decision. And one of the books I'm reading right now is looking at the idea of you need to make people angry. You need to make 80% of your audience angry, and then 20% are going to be like, oh, I love that. But if you have this benign response across the board, nobody's going to really love you. Nobody's going to hate you. You're just going to ride in the middle, and your impact will be limited. So I thought that was interesting. The guy's like, oh, you have to piss people off.
Oh
You have
yeah,
to.
in advertising, you have to polarize, otherwise it's boring. It's vanilla. It's like the 99% of the ads that you see that just are not interesting. 100%.
And without mentioning any names in our space, there are people that I've watched become very popular, and I'm like, man, I feel like they're going crazy. And now, after I'm reading all these books, I'm like, wait a minute, they're getting coached to say things that are very triggering and polarizing because it draws eyes in on them. I mean, it's you can't help but do it. And agree, disagree, you're clicking, you're liking, even if you're giving that person shade in their comment section, you are helping the algorithm to feed more people in. So it definitely works.
Maybe I need to be more polarizing. Honestly, I always feel like coming from your authentic self makes the most sense. And yeah, anyway, that's a different discussion. But yeah, how you see
It's a
yourself.
different discussion.
Part of my work is your life vision. We look at ikigai. We look at like, why are you getting up in the morning? Because when you look at sorry, I just interjected here, but when you look at the blue zones, right? Dan Bittner's blue zones. Have you seen that on Netflix? Yeah. Have you
I did,
noticed
yeah.
that barely anybody wears glasses? So, but they all have this purpose. They all have this plan de vida in Costa Rica or the ikigai, like this idea there's a purpose. There's a reason that I get up every morning. And I think, why do we get cataracts at 65? Why
Mm,
is that so? Why do we lose some of the near vision as we get a little older? Like why, from a purely emotional standpoint, it's like we're kind of detaching ourselves a little bit. Like like and cataract is a clouding of the lens, and Louise Hay said there is no joy. There's like a dark future. So a lot of times people are like, what now? Like now I'm 65, kids out of the house, like I'm retired, like what now? And I think that is
yeah,
a huge piece that we need to look at.
yeah, yeah. What do you not want to see?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I know. I know. It is work that is sometimes uncomfortable, and I will say not meant for everybody. But if you do have the courage to look at some of those, the energetics of why things are changing in your body, or, if I'm going to say everything's a miracle, I have to look at why cancer was called into my life
Mhm.
as a form of growth, as a catalyst for change. Um, Back to I derailed us a little bit with the Bates method, but the natural vision therapies. So what are some techniques or some tools you may use to work with a client that could improve vision? Right now, I'm being targeted every day, everywhere I go. I'm getting these ads for the glasses with the little holes in them all over, and they're
Oh,
like
the pinholes. Okay.
the pinholes. They're like, wear these glasses 20 minutes, your vision will be great.
No. Okay. So
No.
pinhole glasses, by the way, guys, those are the glasses with the little holes in them. And basically what they do, you know how the light gets reflected everywhere, right? So when you
Yeah.
squint, right, when you try to do this, you basically, it's like you make a little hole with your finger. You basically try to bundle the light already and kind of point it, like make it more, I don't express myself well, but you get the point. It's like less straying around, it's more focused. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what these glasses do. And they can be a great transition for somebody who is in glasses already, wants to transition out of the stronger glasses. You can't use them for driving, but some of my people like them for going on a walk because they might be light sensitive. They also block a little bit of that light versus putting sunglasses on for reading, for watching TV. But wearing those is not going to teach you anything about how to use your eyes properly and how to integrate with the brain. But they can be a great tool, because they give you this instant clarity for up to 3 diopters, minus or plus, based on the size of the holes. So first of all, I want to be very clear. I'm not doing therapy. So vision therapy is done by behavioral optometrists, sometimes called neurooptometrists. They usually work with fusion problems where people, especially kids, they have the eyes don't work together. One eye goes out, one eye. So they usually focus on those things.
Mm-hmm.
What I do, like one of the things that we do is reducing light sensitivity. Because when you are nearsighted, farsighted, astigmatism, in most of the cases, there is a level of light sensitivity. So we slowly doing techniques like sunning, which we start with closed eyes, with the back to the sun, even sometimes. But eyes are light receivers. It's like when you say my ears are sensitive to sound, I just want to run around with earmuffs all day. Like you need to like the eyes need to be able to receive light. Okay, so we need to train the pupillary reaction. So the pupillary reaction is how quickly do the pupils get small when bright light comes in, how quickly they open up. Night driving is one of those things that people complain about. I can't drive at night. So when you actually stop wearing sunglasses, and I always say with a disclaimer, extreme conditions, sunglasses, skiing, on the ocean, totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
Or if your pupils don't constrict, some people take drugs or they have a problem where the pupils don't constrict in bright light, you really need to wear sunglasses because your macula is not, the nature is just smart, right? The pupils are the built-in sunglasses. So we do that. We rest the eyes a lot. We also, resting your eyes, doing something called palming, where you close your eyes and then also eye movement. And eye movement there's four types of eye movement. One of these eye movements is called saccadic eye movements, and they are the little, like think of the heartbeat of the eye. So the faster your saccadic eye, the heartbeat we run slower, but we want the saccadic eye movements to be super fast. just like breathing and blinking, we can optimize those things. We can blink more, we can breathe better because the brain needs oxygen, and we can improve the saccadic eye movement. So I teach specific techniques for that. And then one of the things is looking up close, looking far away. How do the eyes accommodate? And then how do the eyes work together? So some of these things you could call them exercises, but I prefer the word relax exercises or techniques or practices. And idea is that all these things eventually become habits. Like I don't spend it's like when you change your diet. Initially you need to learn, how do I replace this with this? How do I make healthier version of this food, right? You need to study labels, but eventually you know how to make healthy food. You don't have to invest, you know what I mean? So it's the same with vision improvement. Initially you have to undo all the things that got you to this place. And for some people it's 80% emotional stuff. For some people, it's mostly habits, like, how the posture on the computer, progressive glasses, which is those bifocals, they lead to postural problems that can actually create astigmatism. Astigmatism is related to posture. So we have to look, like, what is the thing that screwed you up? Like, that was the main reason that your vision got blurry. And for a lot of people, it's also really extreme stress. It's physical,
Yeah.
mental, emotional stress that can lead to vision problems.
Yeah. I mean, I also think about this idea that from a particle physics energetic standpoint, like we're pretty there's not really separate, even though the table feels firm and I feel the chair. On a small particle scale, we're all one. And if we think about like the collective temperament of the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic and the election and the wars, there's a lot energetically on the plate. And for me, I'm an extreme empath. When I first got sick, I had moved to New York City the month of 9/11, right? The buildings are still smoking, and I would go home and not tell anybody, but I'd cry in the shower because I wasn't sad. I didn't I didn't didn't have an awareness about sadness, but I was picking it up on the subway, and it was visceral, and I would off gas it. And eventually the camel broke, and it was like autoimmunity, severe, like whatever was going on my terrain. But I'm aware of that, and I can't imagine that's not having an impact right now, across the board for
100%.
all of us. Yeah.
100%. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, and so we had these fires in my
Oh.
house. I wasn't affected, but we got these alarms to evacuate. I had friends that stayed with me. I know so many friends that lost. I was so, I couldn't even, I haven't felt this deep level of sadness and just, like, I don't know, also love for the city and the community and how everybody helps.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going through the roller coaster of emotions that I have not, like, and yeah, and elections and all this other stuff, pandemic. But my vision got blurrier too. And I want everybody to know this. I hate when people say, fix your eyesight or correct your vision. Yes, I don't need glasses, but vision fluctuates for everyone because your
Mm-hmm.
nervous system fluctuates. And when you are in stress mode, your pupils dilate, your peripheral vision shuts down, your heart rate goes up. All these physical feedback happen. And so we have to be very conscious. Our vision is always best when we're in the relaxed state. And relaxed doesn't mean like zoned out. It's this relaxed, and the aura ring, right, tells us this kind of, I think it calls it engaged. You're engaged, you're focused, you're learning, you talk, but you're relaxed. You're not like stressed out, where you're in that high level of stress. And so many of us are constantly in this level of stress by over consuming news, right? So where
Mm-hmm.
can we kind of focus, like with meditation, whatever it is that we need, but get back to this sense of what you said, the sense of unity and love, and that we're all one. And it's daily work. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I go through the roller coaster too. And I do notice that my vision is getting worse when I'm in those, or when I went through the divorce, or, any kind of
Mm-hmm.
things that really shake us up. And I always, and this is something I want to ask you too, like when you, doesn't matter if you have presbyopia or you got glasses in childhood, but what happened, like, let's say 6 months, a year, 2 years before you got your glasses? And more often than not, when you tune in, oh, yeah, I just had it, I did a whole episode on emotions with my coach, Trisha, who was really good with she's an intuitive person. And we talked about the emotions and how, especially eye diseases, there's always a correlation to, for some people, that's a big one. And other people have physical risk factors plus the emotional things happening. But we cannot ignore those things because it's all like the toxic cocktail of physical stuff and toxins and diet and
Yeah.
news, all this stuff affects us deeply.
Yeah. How do you keep everything in balance for you? Because I know at times I've allowed myself to fall down a rabbit hole and become hyper fixated on mercury toxicity or spirochetes from Lyme. I can be like, that is causing the 100% of my pain, and I must, either eliminate this bacteria or I need to deburden my brain from mercury, which ironically, so now that we're talking about this is really funny. I will tell you that I'd been playing around with a new binder to move metals probably 6 to 8 months ago, and I was doing one system for a while. I definitely overburdened myself because I kind of got in this loop where I wasn't sleeping great, and then I just am finishing a month of the Quicksilver Scientific Advanced Push Catch, and that is kidney care, liver sauce, a binder, glutathione, cell membrane mend. And 2 weeks into that, my hearing was so sensitive at night after my second dose. I was like, I like somebody chewing in a room or setting down a fork on a plate. It was like fingernails on a chalkboard. Now,
Ooh.
at the end of the month, now because I'm now kind of at the end of the month, I was like 10 days on, 4 to 5 days off, 10 more days. It's pretty much gone. So whatever was moving through the system, and I'll say I basically manage that just through daily meditations and breath work. I mean, all the stuff I do. I'm like, obviously, I'm doing sauna, cold, red light, all the biohacks in the world, flow presso every week. But I will tell you, committing to a daily practice, especially when my body's like wanting a stimulant to push through the next interview or assignment. Like today before our thing, I was like, nope, I'm getting on the hydrogen gas. I'm going to breathe hydrogen. I'm going to do new calm, and I'm going to do a vagal stimulator. Lay down on the couch. And I was like, oh my God, I feel amazing. And it was just 20 minutes. I wasn't there for an hour, but I just really felt the clarity, and like, I was like, wow, my cup is filled. Amazing. I didn't feel tired or like I wanted to go sleep more. And I didn't sleep. I just was still. And I was kind of doing some visualizations about love and some other things, but that's how I would like work with that as it was coming up.
Well, I have my protocols too, but I also, you're right, it's a tricky question because sometimes, we get obsessed with that data. I have a blood glucose monitor in my arm, and it's great
Mm-hmm.
information, but sometimes I also like I want to like just remove all these things and just be. Like I sometimes, things like going to Joshua Tree National Park where there is no cell
Mm.
reception and you're like, and I haven't done that in a while, but I feel like I'm really craving like being in nature and not knowing
Mm-hmm.
anything and just really tuning in. Because there's this fine line of like analyzing everything and trying everything and looking at symptoms. And yes, I sometimes drink coffee too much. Like today I just had 1 cup, right? But yeah, yes, sometimes I do that and I do fall into the okay, let's drink another cup of coffee versus doing the rest. And there's days where I don't meditate because I overslept, whatever. But I also think, we have to forgive us. Like there's also this level of being too perfect, and actually glaucoma is an eye disease related to perfectionism and putting so much pressure on yourself, and sometimes let like not, you know what I mean, like, but catching yourself where you don't want to slide into like, oh, now I need the stimulants and now I need these things. Really tuning in, like, why do I really hungry? Do I really need to eat something, or is it just something I want to bury under the rugs, and that's why I want to eat the bag of chips, whatever, right?
Mm.
Tuning into those things is really, really important. But I think it's also okay to like sometimes things happen. Like when the fires
Yeah.
happened, I opened the bag of chips. I was like, you know what? But then I caught myself, a couple of days after that, and I do track my sleep. But I think finding the sweet spot of tracking these things, but also not going completely bananas is kind of can be tricky.
Yeah. When you work with people, do you encourage people to have some type of an apparatus to track nervous system tone and sleep?
I mean, I do online courses right now, so we recommend certain tools, but I don't really. I mean, most of the time I say also journal, like sometimes just journaling is good. And we do, I mean, it's always this tricky, different line when you work with a bigger group of people, in a lower ticket program, but I do say there's the Aura Ring, there's these things that you can do. We talk about blood glucose monitors because diabetes and all the pre-stages of diabetes are the leading cause of blindness. So, and people like, why do you get a cataract? 60%, if you have any like blood sugar imbalances, you're at a 60% higher risk to get a cataract. So I talk about those things. Um, but not necessarily so much to track it. But I do want to eventually create an app. I do want to. I want to, like, I'm like you. I think all of us curiosity people, we have a little bit of ADD. Like, it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's just like, hey, what is the next big important thing? Versus, I want to do this. I want to do an app. I want to write a book. I want to do a TED talk. I want to, yeah. You know what I mean? So my next step is the certification program because I want more people trained in this, and that's my number
Yeah.
one thing. But sometimes bringing back the focus of like, because you have energy, I have energy. Sometimes I'm a manifesting generator in human design, if you know what that is. I can just do all, yeah, right. We don't need anybody. We don't need anybody. We can pull all this off by ourselves, but then we might have burned ourselves out. So yeah, it's a blessing and a curse sometimes.
Yeah. It's funny, I'm listening to a couple, there's been some people to come into my orbit. One woman I'm going to connect you with, my friend Sam Altieri podcast. I hope I'm saying that right. I went to her mastermind here in Austin, and basically what she does is she's like a visionary. She's a channel. So she could look at somebody like you or me. She's like, oh my God, you need to do this and this and this. And I'm really called to work with a team. I've proven to myself I can do it on my own. I can make a
Hmm.
fine living on my own. I like people. I like collaboration. Especially when you have somebody that's really like can take what you did and they can take it two steps further. That's very attractive to me. And I was like, ooh, that's like, so I'm right now, I'm kind of like, who is that person for me? What is that team? Where are they? So I'm like, I'm looking and I'm listening for that to come in right now. And I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm working on that as well because it's, yeah, like I said, I've done all these things for many years myself, and I raised two daughters on my own, and I started this business like while I was working in advertising full time at the same, like, so there's a point where like how, and I'm going to be turning 64 in 2 weeks actually. So I'm
Yeah.
like, well, what do I want to do with the next 20, 30 years, right? At some point, reflecting back on what we want to do. And that's why I think having a team, and I love, I don't know if you know Mary Morrissey, Dream Builder, but I think she's in her 70s and her whole family works. Her whole family is part of the company. It's just an amazing, and she has this energy, and you can see how happy she is doing this
Mm,
event. But does she work crazy hours every day? I don't know, but I don't want to do that. But I also can't imagine myself just sitting there as a retiree and like doing a cruise or something. I would be bored out of my mind.
no, no. Yeah, and I do like I like what this format offers me as far as connection and learning and engagement. But I like it even more in person. And
Oh yeah, me too.
that is why I like going to these events. I'll go to all the wellness events across the country this year. I'll go to 10 or 20. And I'm always learning from people, always. It's so funny because my girlfriend's an introvert and she was like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, by the end of the day, I'm like on a rocket ship. I'm like, I could keep going. I don't get tired at those shows because people are like, the energy is like,
Me
and I
too,
get
but we're
ideas.
extroverts, right? We're extroverts.
I
I
know.
thought I was an introvert because I was so shy because of my glasses, but then I realized I'm more of an introverted extrovert. Like when I go to events, I'm not usually the one, hey, they need a volunteer. I would never raise my hand. But
Hmm.
I thrive with people like you, and but more like at these events, more at these like kind of smaller settings, but I can go to big events too. So I think that's the extroverted ability. And that's interesting because, just to say this, when you think about the emotional state, so nearsightedness is more connected to a sense of fear and anxiety. Like you literally don't
Mm-hmm.
want to see. And farsightedness is more this like almost like anger or curiosity. You're always pushing out, you're always out there. When it comes to the two of us, I would be like more, hey, how are you doing? We are more concerned with the other person than us. So sometimes we just focus more, and the nearsighted person is usually more focused on themselves and not so much on the. So I find that very, very interesting a lot of times how people behave. And I find more introverts are a little bit nearsighted than.
Yeah.
Um,
Claudia, have you talked to me about like in this world of biohacking and optimization and tech? Like what tech, if there's any, have you ever experimented with that you've seen supportive either to vision directly or maybe it's second, maybe it's just mitochondrial function?
Um, I mean, when it comes to like height, I mean, there's something on the iPhone where you can put in if you get it too close, right? It tells you screen distance is too close. That's helpful in the settings. It's called screen distance. I have a shortcut in my control panel. Okay, I'm not trying to do it, but it's an accessibility thing where you can turn it red at night. So it's you set it up and it's part of the accessibility
Wow.
thing. So I use those things. There's a app called Glasses Off that was developed at UC Berkeley that is for presbyopia, where it's like you have to react really quick. You have to see the letters and how they turn. And I've played around with that for a little bit. So there is some apps also for binocular problems with red, blue. So I feel like there could be some useful apps that train the visual system a little bit, but I usually feel like doing it in real life. I usually tell all my clients to use the visual skills in real life versus doing so much with apps, but I feel like could be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with, I have an infrared panel. I usually try to go outside instead of doing infrared panels. What else have I tried? I'm not so much I know you have all the gadgets in the world. I'm really interested in this, but I'm also, and that could be really, and I think sweating is good. I actually don't have a sauna. My parents, where I grew up in Germany, we had an actual Finnish sauna in the house. So I
Yeah.
would used to go into the sauna as a kid, but then one day I had too much food and I got super sick and threw up. And after that, I didn't want to go in the sauna anymore. But that's really
Are,
helpful. Sweating is helpful, definitely important.
are you
Yeah,
coming to either Health Optimization or Dave Asprey's event this year?
I'm speaking at Health Optimization.
Okay, great. So I'm right down the road, like 15 minutes. So
Oh
we're
God, we
both
have to connect 100%.
Well, both of those will have a party here, and we have a 12-person ceremonial Finnish sauna with a stove and wood burning and a cold plunge and all those things. So we'll do that. Like I would love to do it the setup day before the show, so everybody's not spent. Um, so keep that. I will bookmark you
Let
in
me
my
know
brain.
right away. Let me know right away because I
Yep.
think I'm flying I want to fly on the 11th, but if it's the day before, let me know what day it would be. I would love to do that. I mean,
Okay, great.
lived in Mexico for a few weeks and there was a cold plunge, and I have to tell you, I mean, nobody likes it. And I know the dopamine rewards and all the things, but I 10 times do sauna and then maybe jump in in the winter, I would use jump in the snow.
Uh-huh.
Cold plungers, I've done it a couple of times. I don't know. I just, yeah,
It's
I
not
don't
for
need,
you.
no, no.
Great. Yeah. Great. Yeah. I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do. To build community, because it's one thing to do by your own in the morning when it's cold out and it might be snowing right now or something or sleeting and you're like, am I really doing this cold plunge all by myself? But when everybody's chatty Cathy in the sauna and and then you're cheering each other on and there's good music going, it's more about the environment, it's more about the milieu we've created
Right.
as opposed to just cold plunge. But I think the science is strong, and I will tell you, I was terribly maladapted to cold after going through, especially the autoimmunity and all the surgeries, and I'm not. I mean, I was just in Montana skiing. It was 1 degree, and I was on the hill from 9:30 to 3 p.m. I took one break. I mean,
Yeah,
I was
but
like,
you also, what you have to know though, Freddie, a lot of these
mhm,
studies are done with men. And
yeah,
so at this point, I want to know what is the benefit for menopausal women? Like my
yes,
audience, 90, like out of 100 people that sign up for my course, usually I get like 2 or 3 men, but almost all of them are menopausal women. And sometimes I get women in their 30s or 40s or that are
mm,
more proactive. But so then I'm curious, is there a difference, when our hormone, like But
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I wouldn't say no to a cold plunge ever, but it would definitely not be something that I want to incorporate in my day. I do recommend warm and cool, like splashing of the eyes or compresses. We want to
Yep.
stimulate the circulation, lymph massage. You know, I do that, like lymph,
Mm.
all those things. I do myofascial release. I'm a big fan of massaging the fascia and the muscles. So I use little therapy balls, and that's part of my methodology because everybody is so tense in their neck and their shoulders, and we have
Yeah.
to optimize. So yes, and I like the communal aspect, and if I'm there, I would probably jump in, right? But my point is, I'm not
Yeah.
going to set up a cold plunge at my house and do that every day. No, no.
I love it. I also think, like we're saying, introvert, extrovert, like manifest generator, everybody has a different energetic type. So I'm sure there's a person that's like, that doesn't feel like a full hell yes with my body.
And you know
And
what I want to say, Freddie, too sorry to cut you off, but people
no,
always ask
please.
me, how often should I do something? How often? Give me the protocol. And I find with high performing people, they want like the 2 minute, like give me this protocol. And they don't usually see results because they see it from a purely mechanical versus, okay, tuning in, like again, what is my emotional state? Like however relaxed. So I always say, check it out. Maybe you would be best with like, or palming. Let's use the iris, right? Maybe you're the person who has eye strain a lot and you should do it every time you feel eye strain for like 30 seconds a minute. Or maybe you're the person who would benefit by doing it for 30 minutes in the evening, like really. So I want you to be Sherlock Holmes about your own vision and really tune in to like what, because if you get benefits in 2 minutes, why would you do 5 minutes? That to me
Mm,
sounds stupid, but everybody is different. And so I'd rather have people be more tuned in. I give you an example. I had this exercise called the swing, and it's about improving the saccadic eye movements. And I had this guy who was a fitness instructor. He owned several gyms. He was like, okay, I did this drill every day, 100 swings for like, and I'm like, well, how did your eyes, what did you notice? I wasn't paying attention to that. So he would see it as a purely, and that's not how you get results with vision. It's a sensory organ, and it's brain based, and we need to, yes, some of the mechanical things can be good, focus near far, but I usually get bored with these mechanical things. I don't know about you. I think they're incredibly boring, so I make it more fun. I make it more play, more games. Really, that's what I'm all about.
yeah. Yeah, I would join with you in that. And I would just say, like, it's the energy behind the action to which you're entering in this experiment. And there's this biology of belief. How much do you want to allow yourself to be fully present with the therapy or the exercise or the training regime and really have fun with it?
Hmm.
Science tells us we're going to get a better result. So yeah, I mean, yeah, as much as I like the toys, believe me, there are so many people in my little silo that are multimillionaires and they have all the toys and they are no better than they ever were when they started because they managed to bypass the gift in the moment of being in the present moment. It's really, I think that is a universal truth that keeps coming up for me. When you talked about tech a little bit. What about nutrition or nutraceuticals? Are is there a category of things you love for people to have present in their dietary platform to support um, eye health?
Yeah, I mean, we basically the eyes need, they're the most sensitive organs. That's why we find Lyme, mold, diabetes often in an eye exam because the eyes show these things first. There are specific eye nutrients. If you ever looked at eye vitamins, they have lutein, zeaxanthin, astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is a micro, like an algae. Lutein, zeaxanthin, highest level either in egg yolks or in kale and spinach, so the dark leafy greens. I am personally plant-based. I don't care what you are, but I think the foundation, everybody needs to
Yeah.
get a rainbow of all these, like we need the beta carotenes, which is the precursor to vitamin A, and that is the precursor to rhodopsin, which covers the rod cells. The rod cells in the retina give us night vision and peripheral vision. The cone cells, the ones I talked about in the macula, the sharp vision, and they need lutein, zeaxanthin, so they need to get that through the diet, and that's why you need to get all these different vitamins into the diet. Omega-3 fatty acids, we know important for brain health. Vision is part of the brain. So getting that into your diet. And honestly, I don't care if you eat salmon or like me, I eat chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, walnuts, whatever it is, but you need to get these healthy fats into your diet. And then also detox, right? There is a huge connection to cataracts are often connected to lead exposure, mercury exposure, to all the crap in the personal care products, steroid drugs. So a lot of times, I had a woman the other day, like, my dog has cataracts. I'm like, did he have to take steroids? Oh yeah, the vet, he had his hip issues, but the vet didn't say anything. I'm like, well, but that's the thing. A lot of tobacco, smoking, everything that's bad for you is even more bad for the eyes. That's bad English, but you get my point. So,
Yeah.
I do talk about those things. And I give you one story. This is where I just don't get it. So I had a guy call me from the hospital. He said they just amputated my toes. I have diabetic retinopathies. I have cataracts. I have glaucoma. Can you help me? I'm almost blind. I'm like, yeah, I can help you. Number one, we're going to change your diet. Never heard from the guy again. I'm like, okay, it's your decision. It's your eyes.
Yeah.
It's your life.
Yeah. No, I had a woman on God, one of the social media platforms the other day reach out and just said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I know her. She goes, "What do you think about this herbal regimen for Bartonella, which is a co-infection of Lyme disease?" And I said, "I like it, but the first thing I'm going to ask you." She's like, "I don't want to talk about that." I was like, what are you eating? What's your alcohol consumption? What's your sugar intake? What are your eating times? What are your windows? She's like, I really want to focus on this. I was like, well, then good, go for it. But you're going to spend all this money because it's expensive on this long protocol. And we're not going to change this. What I'll tell people, any question, just flood the body with good nutrients, good clean food that's been loved, food that's covers your nutritional basis. There's a million ways we can do that now, but I have not found a supplement that's like, oh, this one does this for all these people, because again, in 100 people in a room, and if we want to mark people with MS, everybody's got a different metabolic type, a
Hmm.
metal load,
Hmm.
an environmental toxicity. They'll all be different. So their disease, we wouldn't look at that disease profile or approach that person in the same way. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to. I find it's tough to. I don't coach anymore. I don't do one-on-ones because I got to a point where I felt, because I'm doing other things, that it was a disservice, because what I really found is like, wow, this person really, you need a person who is just focused on you and your journey, and you're going to be with that person until you get the results that you want. But I was getting more and more people, they're like, no, I don't, I just want to know what, device to buy. I just want to know what supplements to take. I just want to do a one. And that's very, I never had people getting amazing results that way. Sometimes, but most of the time, I'm like, this is a total paradigm life shift. You're experiencing illness because, again, if we want to look at those guiding principles of nature, we're out of alignment with probably 6, not 1, right? And so it's a bigger game. It's a bigger game plan.
I do. I want to say two more things. So what I found helpful is carbon 60. So I've been recommending that, especially with inflammation in the eyes. Carbon 60 is a great way to, help reduce oxidative stress, especially with
Yep.
any retinal. And then castor oil. I use castor oil more, like, around the eyes, and I helps. It just it just feels like a really good. I do liver packs, so I use that. Those I recommend that. And talking about private coaching, I stopped doing that 2 years ago because I actually saw people in group programs getting better results. The private people, like, oh, can
Yeah.
we postpone the session? Then other things happen. But in the group program, with a clear beginning and an end, there's community, there's support. Everybody is going through it together, and that's
Hmm.
why I changed that as well, because and we all creatures of habit. I mean, let's face it,
Mm.
making those changes, if you don't have a big why, or why it's important to you to do those things, it's just easy to fall back into old habits. And so, yeah, and that's why I'm like, it's called supplements for a reason. It's supplementing things, that you might not get from the food. It's not a Ersatz, in German we would say. It's not replacing a good clean diet, and water filters. All those things are important. So we do coach people on that. Like, how can you reduce the toxic burden? But at the end of the day, that's why I'm not such a gadget person myself, because everybody wants to know, what supplement should I take? What do you think about infrared, whatever things? I'm like, yeah, it's great, but you can also just go outside and get your free infrared. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, living where you live, now I get to coach you for a little bit just because We can. Because you're in LA, because you're in the area, and because you've been around the fires. One of my favorite portable saunas is the Therasage sauna, which
Yeah, I
which
want to
you know
get
your head
one.
your head pops out and you slide it under the bed and it's under $1,000 and it's good. I mean, you sweat. I mean, you'll sweat like a pig and it doesn't
I've been
take up
meaning
any
to get
space.
one, 100%. I do
Yeah,
want to. I want to get back to that regimen, 100%. Yes.
that's a great. I mean, that's a great longevity one. Um, Claudia, who's your ideal avatar to go into one of the group coaching programs or take some of your content or your courses online?
I mean, ideally, you do it before vision. I have sometimes people who just start like you. They just have a little bit of blur at the near point, and they want to
Yeah,
be proactive. That would be ideal because then it's so much easier. But most of the time, we get women over 45, 50. They get frustrated with the glasses, like hearing the same thing from the eye doctor, paying like hundreds of dollars for these. They notice every time I do a webinar, I'm like, oh, did you also like this or this, this or this? And were you really confused and stressed when you had to make a decision? Yes. Did you get the glasses and they were too strong and made you dizzy? And the eye doctor said, oh, just give it a couple of weeks and you're going to get used to that? Yes. And did that feel good? No. And so I kind of educate people on these things, saying no to these stronger glasses, saying no to these progressive glasses that cause falls, dizziness, astigmatism, and we slowly unravel some of the things. But ideally, you would do all this before it starts. But sometimes you have to experience, and you have to know that you just feel that decline, and you're like, or you see your parents. A lot of times they see their parents losing their vision or getting blind. So, but I would say, the ideal avatar is willing to look at themselves, to also connect on all these levels, physically, emotionally, mentally, to their vision, to be maybe being uncomfortable for a while, maybe using two different pairs one pair for driving, one for computer or reading, if they need glasses, right? Like there has to be a willingness. And I see friends of mine like, oh, I need to do your thing. I'm like, forget about it. You're never going to do it because you think your glasses are sexy or cute. You want to wear your sunglasses all the time. Like, yes, no, you're not going to get see results because it's somehow not important to you.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Don't wait. I mean, back to the top of the podcast. It's not your eyes, it's your brain. So when we're taking care of these little organs right here, we're taking care of the brain. I mean, that's what I'm really hearing.
yeah,
If
that's what it is. And one other thing I want to
Yeah,
say, because somebody said you should work with athletes and celebrities, and I work with some of them, but they might work out for an hour every day. They meditate for 30 minutes. They do that, whatever, cold plunge, all this stuff. And then they're like, give me something that takes 2 minutes a day. I hate my glasses. Give me something. I'm like, that's not possible. There's nothing that you could do 2 minutes a day and then you abuse your eyes for the rest of the day. That's sorry. It's not
yeah,
possible. Go wear your glasses. Goodbye. Have luck. Good luck.
yeah. Lifestyle,
Yeah,
lifestyle adjustments across the board. When I know the answer to this question is going to be, it depends, but I want to ask it anyway.
I know.
If
I
some
know.
if somebody like me were going to come in and I was like, hey, I really want to, this is important to me. It's something that I want to at least halt, or I don't want it to get any worse. I want it to get better. Is there a timeline in which somebody could see improvement based on their level of commitment?
Yes, 100%. I mean, we've seen improvements within a week or 2 or 3 weeks happening, especially if you do it proactively before you wear glasses. 100%. That can be pretty quick. But it also really depends, like, what is your current life like? Because if you do all the
Mm,
supportive things you're already doing, if you are removing a stressor, if you're acknowledging those things, then yes, you can see pretty fast results. I mean, we also get people really fast out of the strong glasses, and sometimes they just wear glasses that are like way lower, and they're like, I can see everything. Like, why was I wearing these strong glasses? So, I have everybody measure their vision also, because all you need is it's an eye chart. It's up there. It's in Snell to just measure your vision. You don't have to have all these fancy machines to measure visual acuity. When it comes to peripheral field tests and ocular, there's some of those things you need to see an eye doctor. But I also tell everybody, go see your eye doctor because I want to make sure that your eyes are healthy. Some of those things, we have to catch early. But you can
hmm
measure your visual acuity you just stick an eye chart on the wall and step 10, 20 feet away and read the chart. And then so
Yeah.
you know where you are. And maybe your glasses are way too strong A lot of people have glasses, they're way too strong because glasses are supposed to correct you for 2020 and not to 2015 or 2010. So yeah, learning about this, understanding, reading prescriptions is something I teach. People are like, I don't know what all these numbers mean. And it's not rocket science. Really
Yeah.
isn't.
Yeah. There's one more question I want to ask. Just I want to be aware of the hour, and I know you have a time commitment. The when we talk about like the visual field and improving vision, one thing I did when I had a really bad mold exposure, I did a test called the visual contrast test. And
Uh-huh.
it was basically looking at like a square of dots, and there'd be a symbol, and then you could see it here, and then it would get fainter and fainter, and they wanted to see how far you could go. And every time I did it, they're like, "Wow!" They're like, "You were exposed to some type of a mycotoxin or an endotoxin is currently in your system." Are you familiar with that test, and do you understand? Could you explain how that works for the audience?
I have heard a little bit about it, but I'm not super familiar about this test. But I want to know more.
Yeah, it was a test. Richie Shoemaker originally did it, and I think his work, it was just such a high correlation of people who did not pass the visual contrast test. And you can get a subscription. You can take like 10 of them for like $20 online. I don't have the link. Maybe we'll find it for the show notes, but I definitely want to go back and do that again. It'd be really interesting because that's something I do is I test my air quality in my home, every 6 months, really. I don't assume that there's not some new leak or something, because I've had so much experience with that, and I know moving around and building qualities are constantly going down to be more affordable, unconscious capitalism, and that's a more and more prevalent thing that I'm seeing. Most people have some level of mycotoxin in their system, which is stressing mitochondrial function.
And that makes sense because part of that is also when you have presbyopia, the contrast ability goes down too. So I would be very interested in that to see those in the air quality tests. So I'm not on that level of what you are with all these different tests, but what I teach is more behavior changes, you know, relaxation, all these level, using the eyes based on eye anatomy, engaging the brain, using your visual thinking, like imagining skills. So we use a lot of those things. I do bring on guest experts also sometimes to talk about some of those things, like we have EMFs or other things, because it could also get like really big in terms of how many things you expect somebody to change or do. But I think it's my people, especially my membership, they love to hear about all these things, and I do too. So I think it's always important to learn about
Yeah.
another thing that you can do 100%.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, because it's the Beautifully Broken podcast and we look at these times where we fall down, how we pick ourselves back up, can I ask you, what does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
Um, what does it mean to me? Oh gosh. I think it means that we can always put things together. I was just at a hotel near Legoland, and Legos always remind me, like, you take them apart, you put it back together. So I like that idea of, like I said, my vision also responds to things around me and how I feel and my stress levels. But understanding that that's something that is a reaction to something versus, oh, I'm just getting older. It's normal. So I
Hmm.
think that really what it means is that being aware of these things, and then you can take action. And sometimes you need a coach or a guide to help you with that.
Yeah. And if you had a magic wand and you could wave it to all the TV screens in the world and they could tune in to channel Claudia, what would you say to the people of the planet right now? If you could just give everybody a message.
Really connect to your heart, because at the end of the day, you see from your heart. You see through the lens of your heart is really how you see. And once we kind of get that feeling of deep relaxation and love, that's one thing I would say. And then also, like, don't believe that glasses are the only solution to blurry vision.
Beautiful. And finally, where can people find you online if they want to learn more about your work?
So I have a website, naturallyclearvision.com. And then I'm known as the Holistic Vision Coach on Instagram and YouTube. And I have to say, I'm not on TikTok yet. I can spread myself too thin. But yeah, Holistic Vision Coach, Instagram and YouTube, and then naturallyclearvision.com.
And you said naturallyclearvision.com.
Yes, that's my website. And that's also my methodology. Yes.
Beautiful. We'll put all those in the show notes and give people a route to find you. It was a pleasure having you on the show. I'm sure we'll be back to do another one. And fascinating topic. And I celebrate your work and what you're doing in the world.
Same to you, Friday. I always learn so much from you, and this is really like I'm like you. This is makes me so excited. Now I want to learn more about this visual contrast test. So yes, thank you so much for having me and letting me share this message with your audience.
Great. And I will see you soon in Austin. Namaste.